What are the most convenient tools to have if you want to test old stereo equipment when you're at an estate sale? That's been an ongoing conundrum I've had since long before I started this channel. Over the years, I've put together a figurative tool bag of everything I take with me when I go, and that's what I'm going to show you today, since I got such a positive response to the idea. That's what we have here. Before I talk about the tools, I want to clarify something. Estate sales are kind of a unique situation when it comes to old audio equipment. Normally, it would be a very irresponsible and possibly dangerous thing to just plug an unknown piece of equipment into a wall outlet and turn it on. That's why I have things like this dim bulb tester and the dummy load on the wall behind me. When you're at an estate sale, it's pretty common that when you see old stereo equipment, it's still plugged into the wall where it's been like that for the last 40 plus years. And when it's not, a lot of times it's sitting on the floor nearby. You can usually assume that it's safe to plug that stuff in because it was only unplugged a couple of days ago by the people selling it. And a lot of times they've already plugged it in beforehand just to see if it powers on. Although, granted, they don't have time to test it fully, which is why you want to come prepared. Now, I've tried to categorize these tools into 5 groups: speakers, amps, components, turntables, and always. If I'm going to a sale, usually it's because I've seen what they have on estatesales.net and I'm going there to try to look at something specific that I saw in the pictures, which means I'm only going to bring the tools that I know that I'll need. I don't like to carry extra stuff around if I can help it, and if it all fits in my jacket pocket, that's even better because then I don't have to get my bag inspected at the entrance. So, starting with speakers, let's look at what I usually bring with me. A standard and Phillips screwdriver, a 90-degree pick, a headphone adapter for my phone, and a little collection of adapters for the most common speaker types. The standard screwdriver is just there for the screw terminals in the back. The pick and the Phillips are for removing the grills so I can see how crumbly the foam suspensions are, which they always are. These are the speaker adapters I usually bring. A 3.5mm to banana plug adapter, which can work on its own, as well as some pin connectors for spring clip terminals, or spade connectors for screw terminals. And also a little stubby RCA cable with a 3.5mm adapter for RCA inputs, which aren't super common, but do show up sometimes. Living down here in the desert, it's not uncommon that things get sand in them or dry up and stop working entirely. And while it's not necessarily difficult for anyone of any skill level to fix a speaker, sometimes original replacement drivers can be pricey unobtainium. So it's good to know at least everything is functional before you buy stuff. Amplifiers and receivers require a few more little gizmos than speakers do, so that's when I usually bring the actual bag. Most of the time, I have a pair of cheap gas station headphones with a 1/4-inch adapter, a pair of screwdrivers, a 3.5mm to stereo RCA auxiliary cable, the little lightning adapter, an RCA to 3.5mm adapter, a little speaker with wires attached, which you guys may remember from a previous video, a folding antenna, and this interesting little object, an RIAA inverse adapter. The things I have time to check at the sales are the input-output section, the speaker outputs, the headphone jack, and if it has a tuner, I can check that. Things are much easier if it's got a tuner because that will, if nothing else, generate static, and a signal if you hook up the antenna. Having a tuner built in saves me a couple steps. I test the headphone jack with the headphones first, listening to the radio tuner. Then, I'll hook this little guy to each speaker output to make sure that we get sound. It's not good to send a signal to a speaker output if nothing's connected, so you want to set the amp accordingly as you test each output. Also, I only do this at very low volume for a second or two per output, both to preserve the amp and not annoy everybody else in the room. Once I'm satisfied the speaker outputs are functional, I'll use the headphones and a 1/4-inch adapter to test each input in the back by playing some kind of sound from my phone through them. It doesn't really matter what. Usually it's whatever I was listening to last on Spotify. To test the tape monitors, I can hook my headphones to this little RCA adapter and check each of those outputs for a couple of seconds. Lastly, I'll check the phono inputs for the amp. That's what this little RIAA inverse filter is for. It attenuates and converts a line level input to the much lower volume and equalization that a turntable would output so you don't screw up the preamp. My phone outputs about 0.5 VRMS at full volume. Line level is 0.316, so I leave the phone at full volume and switch the RIAA filter to negative 60 decibels, which puts it below cartridge level and doesn't overload anything. Remember, in field tests, I'm not checking how it sounds, just that it sounds at all. Quick and dirty. So now, if I have a tape player or any kind of component, I usually bring headphones, a 1/4-inch adapter, an RCA adapter, something to try playing on the device, so a CD, cassette, or 8-track, and a Phillips screwdriver. Always bring the screwdriver. I'll tell you why in a minute. Inserting media is usually the quickest test. Just press play. I hook the headphones to the RCA adapter and test each RCA output in the back, then hook up the 1/4-inch adapter and test the headphone jack if there is one. If it's a tape deck, I don't bother taking the time to test the inputs and outputs because it's rare that the belts are still intact anyway, so I just pop in a tape and then press play. If it plays, I'll hook up the headphones and that's usually all I do. I have yet to find a tape machine where the inputs and outputs don't work. The screwdriver comes in when you're dealing with a CD player because sometimes they won't spit your CD back out, so you're going to need to open the shell to get your disc back. It's either that or you just have to say goodbye to Christina, which is fine. She is a genie. She's used to small spaces. Turntables are a totally different situation. I bring an old 45, an RCA to XLR adapter, some headphones, the stubby cables, and this big thing. I bought this randomly at a rummage sale for $10. It's a Saramonic SR AX104. It's normally meant for running sound for filming, and that's usually what I use it for. But I also realized it works to boost the level of a turntable output so that I can hear if it's working, since that's not too far off from what it's doing with condenser microphones. And it runs off of a 9-volt battery. Phantom power off. To be clear, I am not recommending you guys buy one of these just to check turntables. It sounds terrible. The equalization is totally off and it's absolutely not meant for that. But I make do with what I have. And I have this. Which leads me to a question for you guys. Instead of this bulky thing, do you have any suggestions for an inexpensive testing solution to make sure that a turntable can output sound if there's no amp around? Critically, something small and battery powered. Let me know in the comments. These stubby cables, 99% of the time, I don't need. They're just here in case the turntable doesn't have cables wired in. These last things come with me every time, no matter what I'm looking at. It's only a couple things. These are the most important to me. Gloves. Why? Because some people are really gross. I've been to way too many sales where everything in the house is sticky for some reason. There was a pair of really cool speakers at a sale about a year ago that I passed on because the cabinets felt like fly paper. It was disgusting. So bring gloves with you. Another smart thing to have with you is a light of some kind. I usually just use my phone's flashlight, but things like this work great too. It's a little flashlight that I actually bought at a gas station. It's got a laser, a clip, and it even has a little magnet on the back. Thanks to Toronto John for that suggestion. I also have this little thing. It's a tiny lighted microscope. I honestly don't know where I got it, but it's not an expensive thing. I mean, the battery compartment is so cheaply made that I have to do the Scotch tape trick on the threads, but it does the job when you're trying to look at really tiny things like a turntable stylus, or coins, or jewelry, or signatures, or whatever else you find. You can get something similar on Amazon for less than $10, I think. Now, I talk about electronics because that's what I'm interested in, but estate sales have all kinds of cool stuff. My folks found an original production copy of the script from The Fifth Element a while back from a guy who did something in the movie industry, might have been sound editing. In fact, probably half of my studio in here is from estate sales and secondhand stores, and my entire living room. It's wild what you can find for practically nothing if you're patient. Now, I do want to make one other point abundantly clear. When I said testing, I meant simply whether any sound comes out when it's supposed to. None of the things I've shown are proper diagnostic tools or definitive tests. You need a proper lab for that. The only determination I'm trying to make is whether I think I can end up with something I can show on the channel. So it either works perfectly or whatever is wrong with it feels like something I can easily fix myself with my very limited skill set. I reiterate, I am not an expert at all. So as I put all these things back into the bag, let me ask you guys this. Do you guys go to estate sales or thrift stores? Do you bring tools with you? And if so, what cool little tricks and tools have you found for checking stuff before you buy it? I'd be interested even to hear about non-electronics tricks, like how my uncle will rub old plastic and smell it to determine if it's Bakelite. Things like that. Leave a comment. I'd love to know what you clever folks have figured out. So I'll see you next time, and keep estate sailing. Slayer.